There you go.
Nick, you're
Not for
dude.
Nick.
He's muted. Can't hear you, Nick.
I don't know how that happened. That was weird.
Where's Adrian?
Thanks for
Did
pointing
it.
that out.
I'm like, wait a minute here, and I was like, I was waiting, and I had my mic muted, and I was like, wait, okay, well, we'll just unmute it real fast.
The one thing I hate more than
Adrian.
one thing I hate more than anything else is like with EV Mux, even after if you're the host yourself, it mutes you. And that's what I hate. That's what I loved more about StreamYard, that it didn't do that for any reason whatsoever.
I use StreamYard on my show, so I don't have any problems with that one. This side doesn't seem to like me.
Yeah, I wish I could say the same. But anyways, for those that couldn't hear me before, welcome once again, everyone, for part 2 of this special episode of Nick Files. We are going to continue on with what we were talking about last night, which was focusing on, like I said, we're now going to be focusing on part 2 of the Galveston hurricane of 1900. Obviously, as you guys had seen, we were focusing on all the events that build up prior to the hurricane and the hurricane itself. But now we're going to be focusing on the aftermath of the hurricane and the eventual recovery. And I will warn you guys that this, as sad as the story had been last night, this unfortunately is probably going to be the most heartbreaking part of the story, and somewhat a little bit graphic, as
Nicola?
Nicola.
Nicola. Okay.
Yeah, as you guys could imagine, what you guys are about to see again, it's relatively heartbreaking. Just give a quick few shout outs. Hello, Nicola. Good to see you. Lois, yeah, sorry to hear that you couldn't make it on, that you've been having these connection problems. And but either way, it's good to see you. I got to just bear with me for just a second here, guys, because I do have to send this out because, like I said, Victoria is unable to join this time. So she did want me to send a link. Hey, Kate, good to see you. Glad Kate's back. But she did want me to send. She did want me to send the link to the show so she could at least listen to it. So bear with me for just a second here, guys.
And time.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's we'll continue.
Wow.
We're gonna continue on from where we were last night. So be ready. So again, be ready for this to be a lot more heartbreaking. So here
And
we
I
go.
have a question about yesterday, sort of.
Yes.
Your numbers. Not totally, but you said 8,000 people lost their lives total, right?
Well, that's what we're also going to eventually get to. But I can tell you right now, the true number of deaths may never be known.
Right.
So many of them.
Does that include like the buffalo thing and all that you were talking about yesterday, or?
That's a really good question, actually, because they usually only focus on just Galveston. Like I said, when you watch any documentaries, it only focuses on Galveston. When I started extending to the other parts where the storm also hit, that was stuff that was rarely ever spoken about. So that's a really good question to ask, though, Chris. It's hard to say, but in my book, if I was to really have an answer for that, I honestly would include them, because even though these were in other states and in other states that occurred, it was a result from the same storm.
Yeah, I thought about it after we went off air. I was like, wait, is that 8,000? So I was like, hey, I can't ask.
Well, what you're going to hear is also the number may even be higher than 8,000.
Yeah.
Kate, I did have a theme. Believe it or not. Hello, Robert. Hey, Noreen, good to see you. Something similar countdown.
I love Noreen. Love her.
Yeah. All right. So I got the slideshow ready to go.
There was like 37,000 total, right? Residents.
There was 37,000 people that were living in Galveston at that time.
Yeah, that's a lot for back then.
It was huge. I mean, like I said yesterday, I mean, for a city like Galveston, it was, like I said, it was also the third richest city in the United States at that time. So it was intended to be like I said, the New York City of the Gulf in that era. But
Right.
unfortunately, the hurricane really wiped that out completely. And that's what you guys are about to see now for part two. So after we follow the track of this hurricane, now we can focus back in Galveston. So here we go.
That was amazing.
Sunday, September 9th. And, on the day of, on the morning of that day, it was gentle winds, clear blue sky. The area is completely tranquil. A beautiful sunrise reveals an otherworldly scene on Galveston Island. Now, as as people people woke as people emerged or crawled from whatever raft of debris or had allowed them to survive. In other words, people woke up the next morning. Those that survived realized that they had been very fortunate, and they looked out on the landscape of Galveston to unlike anything they had ever seen. More than 3,500 more than 3,500 houses are destroyed. Thousands more are damaged. Entire blocks are swept clean. Familiar landmarks have disappeared. Some neighborhoods have literally vanished.
Do you know what? It looks like it's a nuclear disaster.
It does. It really does.
That's
Yeah.
a good way to say it.
So, approximately 10,000 people in the city were left homeless out of a population of nearly 38,000.
Wow.
The survivors gathered outside after they found whatever dry land they could stand on and just started praying and singing. Rescuers could then hear screams and cries of survivors buried under tons of the debris as they walked on the debris, trying to rescue those they could. And, at first they did whatever they could to dig and get them out using their hands or any kinds of tools that they could find. Many, unfortunately, are buried so deep in the rubble that rescue is impossible. And the survivors then came to realize that there was no point in rescuing them. It was too late, and there was nothing they could do for them.
Yeah.
Those who were trapped under the wreckage of the city were stuck for several days and basically, cried themselves to death. In other words, and also, you see, this is where things are going to start getting a little bit more graphic. And normally, I don't have such pictures like this. The dead, thousands upon thousands, are everywhere, and so numerous that they quickly overwhelmed the local mortuaries and were already beginning to decompose in the warm, humid air.
Imagine the smell.
It is. And right here in this picture, as you see, I don't know if that's like a dock or a barge, but right here in between, those are all dead bodies right there. Hundreds.
Wow.
Jesus.
It's just really hard for me to see because it's got like a green type of thing over here at the screen.
Yeah. But yeah, those are all corpses. There's got to be at least hundreds of them, and it's everybody. It's everyone. Men, women, children. It's everybody. Now, this goes back to with what you were just saying, Chris. It is estimated that between 6,000 and 12,000 people, men, women, and children, lost their lives, although the number most cited in official reports is 8,000, which was still 20% of the island's population. Most had drowned or been crushed as the waves pounded the debris that had been their homes hours earlier. A number of fatalities also occurred after strong winds turned debris into projectiles. Most of these deaths also occurred in and near Galveston. No one knows, or ever will know, the precise death toll from the hurricane of 1900. The storm and its aftermath was too chaotic for precise records. A survey conducted by the Morrison and Formey Company in early 1901 indicated a population loss of 8,124. Most people were killed in this single storm than the total of those killed in at least the next two deadliest tropical cyclones that have struck the United States since. With the city in ruins and railroads to the mainland destroyed, the survivors had little to live on until relief arrived. And okay, so I got a couple more of those videos once again.
Okay. I like these.
On the morning of the 9th of September, we didn't know what had hit us. There was no water.
People were passing by, screaming and crying for help, and had no clothes on. The wind had ripped all their clothes off.
Okay, so now these in the next few slides, I don't even have to really speak on these because the next few slides you guys are about to see are more damaged photos of the aftermath of this hurricane. So these photos basically will pretty much tell the story themselves.
Willow. Yep.
That's that picture right there on the right. As you guys can see, that was one of the morgue pictures. Once again, more of the bodies.
Wow. Some places did stay up.
Look at
Oh my
that.
God.
And there's one that's got a skull. That was probably one that was probably uncovered later. Because,
Yeah.
like I said, some of the bodies were already decomposing.
Yeah, I mean, salt water and fish probably eat them.
Yeah, yeah.
We got another picture here that's got a dead body in the debris. Probably a drowned victim or a crushed victim.
Or both.
Look at that one right there. They just uncovered. That looks like a mutilated one.
Yeah. Not to sound gruesome, but so many ways you can die during this.
There was. These people died horrific deaths. I mean, I can only hope that, as much as I hate to say it, I just hope it was quick for them.
I mean, there were drownings and crush, and what was it she was saying yesterday? The slate falling.
The slate tiles, yeah. Some like what Kathleen said. Some were probably even decapitated or dismembered from the slates.
The horror show, isn't it?
And then not to mention sharks and then whatever other wild animals.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't think sharks were ever would have been an issue, because when it comes to a storm surge with hurricanes, because people always wonder what happens to a lot of sea creatures, especially when these hurricanes and typhoons are out in the open ocean. Believe it or not, much like people, they often usually scatter and leave the area. Like, they have that sensory that a storm is coming in, even though they're underwater, it could affect them quite greatly. So I don't think when it came to marine predators, I don't think any of that would have made its way onto shore. I mean,
no sharknadoes?
No. I mean, it's like,
What about, Nick? Did any of the ships get blown in? Because obviously it was coming from the sea, wasn't it? And as that came in, did it bring any ships or boats or yachts with it?
Not that I'm aware of. See, this is why, again, I wish Kathleen was back on with us, because she probably would know a better answer.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it were. But yeah, we got some more pictures here. Look at that. Rescuers once again. See, this is probably the most amount I think I've ever seen of photos where dead bodies are found. And it's, this just goes to show how gruesome this was, how devastating it was.
It looks.
Is it actually cold down in that part of the world, Galveston?
Well, the time prior to when this hurricane hit, it was pretty hot. It was like 90 degrees Fahrenheit. As far as what it felt like afterwards, I mean, it was only September, so I would assume that it probably would have still been warm when these pictures were taken.
Imagine if it would have been in a cold area and that happened.
Oh God, it would have been horrible. I mean, it's just like, not only that, but also, again, with all the bodies that were found, combining it with the humidity and the heat. I mean, imagine just that would be like the true stench of death right there.
Yeah.
Horrible.
So I got a couple more pictures here.
And that heat just contributes to the strength of the hurricane. So
yeah.
Right, okay. Wow.
And it's just devastating because it's not even just revolving around those that were killed. I mean, you could see all these majestic looking buildings,
Do you
which
know what it look? Sorry, Nick. I'm sorry. Do you know what these pictures look like to me? It's like looking at some of our ancient buildings from about 700 or 800 years ago. Do you know what's just left?
I was gonna say after like the World War II bombings and
Yeah, but before that, we've got old buildings on in Britain here, and they've fallen to pieces, and they're still there, like the old abbeys and that. That's what that looks like.
yeah.
Well, the other thing too is that, I mean, it very much does look like that, but when they started clearing out these areas, and I'm not just talking right after the hurricane, but over these last couple of years, like we see it a lot in a lot of our towns and cities, like where you have, people that do cleanup efforts and stuff like that just to keep these, towns and cities clean. Like
Yeah.
I've actually heard for people that work down in Galveston, like when they have to do cleanup duties just to make sure that parts of the city are cleaned up over the decades, there were some who didn't mind to pick up, bones and human remains. Because let's face it, deep underneath the city are the watery remains of the old Galveston and the remains of somebody's great great grandfather or mother.
So they're
Yep.
still bringing these bones out to this day.
From what I heard, there still are.
Wow.
It doesn't happen frequently, but every now and then they have found bones and human remains.
Yeah,
Wow.
I've heard that.
It's a gruesome discovery. This is
Great.
probably one of the more infamous pictures.
Is that his house?
Oh, Isaac Klein?
Yeah.
No, it's not. I tried looking to see if there were any pictures of his house prior or after the hurricane. And I couldn't find any. But these are other residential homes. But just
Right. I mean, that's just amazing anyway. That just gives me an idea, but still, wow.
Yeah, this just really shows the true power of Mother Nature right here. That it's never to be underestimated.
I mean,
Here you got another picture with crew of men carrying another dead body. This building here on the second top left photo, it's like blown to its side.
Yeah.
Several other pictures here are just wiped out, just
that
gone.
third one on the bottom with the guy, I don't know why that just speaks to me. The second one from the right.
Yeah, this
It
one,
just
I'm going to...
speaks
That's haunting, that is. And I tell you why it's haunting. This person's standing there in the middle of nothing, and that's all he's got left.
Thank you. That could be.
I can't say for sure, but more importantly, I mean, who knows? He might also be standing among the remains of his house. That might be where his house was.
Yeah, he's got nothing left. He's just
Nothing.
Yeah, they lost everything. Okay, this might be the last slide with pictures.
Wow.
Jesus. Devastation.
Now, I haven't gotten... Oh, wait. I haven't gotten all the pictures, obviously, but
Right.
it's a vast majority of them. Oh, my God. I forgot about this picture. Look at this one. There's a hand sticking out.
Oh, Jesus.
And that looks almost like a child's hand, seeing
It
how
does.
small it is. Just, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
Okay, so continuing onwards. Early property damage estimates were placed at $25 million. However, itemized estimates from 1901, based on assessments conducted by the Galveston News, the Galveston Chamber of Commerce, a relief committee, and multiple insurance companies, indicated that the storm caused just over $17 million in damage throughout Galveston, including about $8.44 million to residential properties, $500,000 to churches, $656,000 to wharves and shipping properties, $580,000 to manufacturing plants, $397,000 to mercantile buildings, $1.4 million to store merchandise, $670,000 to railroads and telegraph and telephone services, $416,000 to products and shipment, $336,000 to municipality properties, $243,000 to county properties and $3.16 million in the United States government properties. The total also included $115,000 in damage to schools and approximately $100,000 in damage to roads.
25 million.
Now, the area...
25 million would be like 900 million today.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I just looked online. So just to give everybody an idea.
The area of destruction, an area in which nothing remained standing after the storm, consisted of approximately 1,900 acres of land and was arc-shaped with complete demolition of structures in the west, south, and eastern portions of the city, while the north central section of the city suffered the least amount of damage. That was because, again, it created that breakwater protecting the interior of Galveston when I showed last night.
Yeah, that saved probably a lot of people too.
Yeah. In the immediate aftermath of the storm, a 3-mile-long, 30-foot wall of debris was situated in the middle of the island.
Wow.
As severe as the damage to the city's buildings was, the death toll was even greater. Because of the destruction of the bridges to the mainland and the telegraph lines, no word of the city's destruction was able to reach the mainland at first. With telegraph lines down, it takes days for word to reach the rest of the country about the tragedy in Galveston. It's only then that help and assistance begins to arrive. The devastation was then captured by a cutting-edge invention. A gentleman who was working for an inventor, Thomas Edison, had just invented a new invention called the movie camera. And this next, so you guys had all seen the pictures I just showed, obviously. What I'm about to show you next is perhaps the most important image of them all. This rare footage was shot by one of Thomas Edison's assistants. The movie camera is among the first of its kind. Now, it is widely believed to be the first ever news film. Now, from what I remember hearing was the story involving this was that Texas guardsmen were leery of outsiders with movie cameras. So the assistant lied and claimed that his newfound equipment was survey gear helped to rebuild the city. But now the guardsman relents, and he films the only motion pictures of what's left behind by nature's most terrible assault on U.S. soil.
Wow. Hey, that's like the first panoramic shot.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, you're right. There's the boats.
Yep.
That's awesome and terrifying all at once.
Oh my God, look at that.
Yeah, that whole ship completely overturned.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Wow.
Some of those boats may have been thrown in, like you said, Lynn.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Tugboat. There's a tugboat there.
Yeah.
I'm betting some of these residents. I was going to say, I'm betting some of these residents here are probably just absolutely, even still, were in shock when this footage was being taken.
I just can't imagine.
Oh, searching ruins on Broadway for dead bodies. Yeah, this was where they were searching for the bodies. I think one body did turn up in that wreckage, but it was not featured in the footage.
Yeah, probably too gruesome.
Can I ask you, do you know the majority of houses there, houses mostly, are they all made of wood or are they made of stone?
A vast majority of them probably would have been made out of wood.
Yeah.
But there were some stone structures like it was for churches and some of the larger ones.
Yeah.
But I think even in spite, because you have to think this was almost 30 years after, in our case, the Great Chicago Fire. and not just Chicago, but a lot of the cities at that time, converted to using other types of material and was avoiding using wood because obviously it was too dangerous. But unfortunately, for some cities like Galveston, they still had wood even at the turn of the century. So
Yeah,
that's why a lot of structures were still made out of it. Yep, that was one of the orphanages. I don't think it was St. Mary's, but it was one of the other orphanages.
I think Kathleen said that yesterday too, Nick.
Yeah.
Except for the roofs. The roofs they made out of all slate because they had that fire like 3 years earlier or something.
It's amazing to me that no fires were started by this hurricane because everyone always thinks immediately like, well, it's water. How could it start? Hurricanes and typhoons can still trigger fires, believe it or not.
Probably not enough gas lines yet.
Yeah. Well, you also have to remember, too, like I said, this was around that time where they were the first city in Texas to have electricity. So a lot of them weren't really relying on gas lines by then. But like you guys can see, it's a compelling piece of footage.
It is.
Mom. So sorry.
You all right, Linda?
Oh yeah, today is my daughter's birthday, so I was giving her birthday present.
Oh, okay. Holy cow, look at that. Did you guys see that?
I did, yeah.
I think they were trying to turn it back up to the way it was supposed to.
Wow.
Thank you, Mama. You're welcome.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just like another minute left.
It reminds me, and I know it's older, but it reminds me of when I watched those really old, like, Flash Gordon movies and stuff.
Yeah. Well, this was this was around the time when films started coming out.
Yeah. But the way the little, like, white thing keeps popping up. And
Yeah. Well, it's 125-year-old footage now, so it's old, obviously.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm not.
So this next clip here, so there's going to be, again, a couple more videos. It's going to show part of the footage again, but this time it shows two survivors, one of which we saw last night, that told about the outcomes of their homes and their families. One of which has a somewhat, I wouldn't necessarily say more upbeat ending, but the other one is just heartbreaking to listen to.
On the Weather Channel, you'll see tornado damage, and these homes are literally wiped out. Well, imagine blocks and blocks of that, to where there's no reference points. You can't see the corner grocery anymore. It's just wood wreckage for as far as you can see.
In an audio-taped history recorded 70 years after the hurricane, Paul Betancourt's grandmother remembers how her aunt couldn't find her house in the unrecognizable landscape. Their only clue was a family pet.
My aunt had a potty, and it was up in the attic.
The Walstein families had a parrot. Of course, and the parrot's name was Polly. I mean, you can't make this up. It's real. Okay, that's right. So this Polly, the parrot, was in the attic.
And the attic didn't go to pieces. It just sat on top of the house. The next month, Polly was like, pretty Polly, pretty Polly. That's how they found where they lived.
Other families are not as lucky.
The grandparents of mine that lived in this house that was probably tumbling down the street. Well, both grandparents and 4 sons and 1 daughter were all killed. But my grandmother and 3 older children were away from home, and they lived.
Her surviving grandmother wrote about it years later.
Never got home again or see anybody. Mother, father, 4 brothers. Oldest was 15 and a sister 22 months. Never found one body.
Oh my God.
They washed to sea along with about 15,000 others that never had a chance.
Damn.
Wow.
So with thousands dead, there is no easy answer to do with all the remains. People began to realize quickly as the morning progressed on Sunday, September 9th, that the loss of life had been quite significant, as the first notice, like we were just talking about, was the sickening odor throughout the city. I
Yeah.
mean, it quickly became apparent that some sort of strategy was needed. The dead bodies were so numerous that traditional burial is impossible, as the water table was too high and the ground was saturated. Taking care of the bodies is one of Galveston's immediate concerns, as you guys can see in these photographs. They then then they decided to place the bodies on a barge and take it out to sea, in which 700 bodies were taken out to sea to be dumped.
Oh my
Initially,
God.
initially, bodies were collected by dead gangs or death crews, as they were called, who stacked the corpses on push carts and wheeled them through the streets to the waterfront, and then unfortunately was given to 50 African American men who were recruited, if you know what I mean by that, as you can see in this photo. And they mainly recruited black people, mostly forcibly at gunpoint, to load them onto barges for burial at sea, and pretty much made them do the dirty work.
Oh my God.
So it was like a brief period of slavery for them.
And didn't Kathleen say a lot of them washed back up because they didn't bury them
That's
properly?
It's funny you mentioned. That's exactly what I was about to get to. Funny enough, is that so they did this for about 2 or 3 days, but however, 2 or 3 days later, they discovered after Gulf currents that washed many of the now bloated corpses back onto the beach, and so
Oof.
therefore a new solution was needed. So to prevent disease and to prevent pestilence, they simply decided to collect and burn the bodies to where they lay and found them. Now, there was actually, now before I continue on, I heard this from one of the documentaries. One historian once said this, but even with these photos, or especially for those who were there on this tragic during the aftermath of this tragedy, it's hard for us to comprehend. I mean, this historian once said that it must have been like a scene from Dante's Inferno. You know, funeral
Yes.
funeral pyres made of scrap lumber and stacked corpses were set up on the beaches, or whatever dead bodies were found, and burned day and night for several weeks after the storm. The authorities passed out unlimited free whiskey as an inducement to keep working and to sustain the distraught men conscripted for the gruesome work of collecting and burying the dead, and to deal with the horror.
Just pay me $50 a day. Hi, Tom.
It's
Up
almost.
here?
Yep. Pickle
Oh,
Tom.
Pickle Tom, good to see you. So, anyways, there was smoke from the cremations. 24 hours a day. It filled the air night and day. Not to mention that the wind was actually fairly light for those next couple of days, which resulted with the smoke settling in the city.
Oh.
The stench was everywhere, and
And
like I said,
And it had to be wet stuff too. I mean, it's not like you go find dry wood either. So
no. I mean, most of the survivors, I mean, many of them, they would never ever forget the horrific smell that they experienced. Individual ritualized cremation was still new to Americans in 1900, and mass burning of the dead were as disturbing in their own way as the sight of unburdened corpses in the streets. So this is a sketch. This is a sketch
sorry,
right
I'm
here.
laughing what Mom said. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is a sketch to show exactly of how they burn these bodies. And I never told, this is actually something new, Lynn. I didn't talk about this last year. There was a friend of the Klein brothers who he had a wife and a 6-year-old son. And when the hurricane hits, they got swept out into the storm surge. And first, their son disappeared. Then after that, shortly afterwards, he lost his wife, had no idea where they were. And in the end, this guy, he did manage to survive, but was one of the many survivors who watched these burnings with a dull horror. His wife was later found crushed to death under debris. And then somewhere, probably on one of those barges, was the body of his 6-year-old son.
Oh,
Jesus.
Yeah.
Here's another survivor account describing the burnings.
I'd stand out there and watch them burn. I'd stand out there and watch them burn the bodies, and then I'd have nightmares and scream.
Now, oh man, this is the part that really gets me a lot. So the teams of death crews spend the next several days roam the city collecting corpses all over the island. One of the death crewmen would later write in a heartbreaking account that while searching for victims, he found a small child in the sand of the beach where St. Mary's Orphanage stood.
Oh.
As he picked the body of this child, he discovered that there was a rope around the waist of this child. He then pulled on that rope and he found another child and continued pulling, finding more children in the sand until finally one of the sisters was unearthed.
This is what you were talking about yesterday, huh?
Yes, I was. Tragically, all 10 of the sisters and 90 orphans died in the hurricane. So only three of the orphans, William Murney, Frank Madera, and Alberta Campbell, survived. I mean, it's still even shocking, even now, that only 3 of the orphans survived, and none of the sisters or the rest of the orphans did.
Oh.
And forgot to say I had a fade in with this, but anyways, miraculously, all 3 ended up together clinging to a tree in the water throughout the night. After floating for more than a day, they were eventually able to make their way into town, where they told the Sisters of St. Mary's Infirmary about what had happened at the orphanage. One of the boys remembered a nun, Sister Catherine, tightly holding 2 small children in her arms, promising not to let go.
Oh.
In the following days, the bodies of the sisters and children were found scattered across the shore, half buried in the sand. 2 of the sisters were found together across the bay on the mainland. Sister Catherine was still devotedly embracing and tightly holding the 2 small children in her arms she had vowed not to release. Even in death, she had kept her promise not to let go. The heavy, coarse dresses and habits these brave women wore had made it impossible to stay above the water once they were wet. Each nun's group were buried wherever they were found, with the children still attached to them. Now, those three surviving children, the 3 surviving orphans, you're about to hear more about how they managed to survive through this 1994 news clip in which they interview the descendants of 2 of those orphans. So I'm going to play this now.
4 years ago this week, the worst natural disaster ever to strike this country hit the Texas coast. 6,000 people were killed on Galveston Island in the Great Storm of 1900. Our Charles Hadlock reports tonight some of those who died are now being remembered.
Galveston has never turned its back on the Gulf, but it has put up a wall. For most of the century, the wall has protected the city from powerful hurricanes, but it cannot protect it from the painful memory of what happened here during the Great Storm of 1900. St. Mary's Orphanage was built away from town to isolate the children from the yellow fever and other deadly diseases that had claimed their parents. 10 Catholic nuns ran the orphanage. In the summer of 1900, 93 children lived there. The orphanage was built just a few feet from the sandy beach. On September 8, 1900, the sisters looked out from the orphanage and knew something was wrong.
They could see it coming in, and that they knew the wind was getting higher and higher.
Julia Wilson's father, Frank Madera, was one of the boys in the orphanage. He and the other children were told to prepare for a storm. Earlier that day, Sister Elizabeth Ryan had gone to town to gather provisions. She stopped by St. Mary's Infirmary to visit the sick.
The sisters here at the hospital tried to encourage Sister Elizabeth Ryan to stay. They said, just wait till after the storm passes. And she said, no, she said, I have to get back to the orphanage. She said, because I have the provisions in the wagon. And if I don't get back, the orphans will have no supper tonight. She didn't know that whether she made it back or not, there would be no more suppers at the orphanage.
The sisters at the orphanage moved the children from the boys' dormitory to the new, stronger girls' building next door.
And they sang an old French hymn called Queen of the Waves. And they sang that song trying to keep the children calm.
Queen of the waves.
With the surf rising, everyone moved to the second floor, including 13-year-old William Murney. Murney had lived in the orphanage only a short time. His mother had just died of tuberculosis, and his father died the very next day of a heart attack. Now, his own life was in peril.
He recounted a long evening of fear, the winds howling, raging, and the water rising. The water came in to the lower floor.
And each sister took a section of rope and tied one end to a child and the other end to the cincture that they wore around their waist. And each sister tied to herself between 6 and 8 orphans.
Suddenly, a giant ball of water crashed into the empty boys' dormitory next door.
And that increased the fears of the children, and they started to scream. And the sisters tried to calm them down and had them again sing Queen of the Waves.
Some of the orphans looked up in time to see a ship smash into the last remaining building at the orphanage.
The orphanage was lifted from its foundation. It floated for a few minutes, and then the roof caved in, trapping the sisters and the children in the water.
The whole building seemed to collapse at once.
William Murney, her brother.
He was holding his brother, his 8-year-old brother. And he thinks a beam hit him, and he never saw his brother again. And he had recollections of being in the cold water, but those were very vague. And he says the real thing that he remembers most was waking up in a tree.
3 boys survived the storm by clinging to a tree. Everyone else died in a watery grave.
One of the scenes he did recall is after he was awakened and was in the tree, seeing some of the bodies of the nuns floating by with 2 or 3 orphans tied to them.
Eventually, the boys were rescued.
Men, he said, were either sailors or people from Galveston that had a small boat that came by and picked them up.
By daylight, the boys could clearly see how truly lucky they were. 6,000 people had died during the night. Many bodies, including those of the nuns and children, were buried where they were found. Others were loaded onto barges and carried out into the Gulf. The young survivors grew up quickly. William Murney lived at St. Mary's Infirmary after the storm and helped the nuns there care for the injured. He later lied about his age and got a job with the railroad. Murney stayed in touch to the other 2 boys with whom he spent that terrifying night together clinging to a tree. But over time, they drifted apart. Now, 94 years later, the state of Texas is honoring the nuns and children lost in the orphanage. The descendants of the 3 survivors will attend the dedication of a marker placed near the site of the orphanage. The marker sits on the wall that protects the city, but it cannot protect it from a painful memory. Charles Hadlock, 11 News.
Wow.
Truly, in my personal opinion, the saddest story out of the entire tragedy, without a shadow of a doubt. So, that same morning, one of the few ships at the Galveston wharf to survive the storm, the Farabee, if I'm saying that correctly, set sail and arrived in Texas City on the western side of Galveston Bay with a group of messengers from the city. When they reached the telegraph office in Houston early on September 10th, a short message was sent to Texas Governor Joseph D. Sayers and U.S. President William McKinley. I have been deputized by the Mayor and Citizens Committee of Galveston to inform you that the city of Galveston is in ruins. The messengers reported an estimated 500 dead. This was initially considered to be an exaggeration. The citizens of Houston storm had blown through and had prepared to provide assistance. Workers set out by rail and ship for the island almost immediately. Rescuers arrived to find the city completely destroyed. Galveston city officials established the Central Relief Committee for Galveston Storm Sufferers, CRC, chaired by Mayor Walter C. Jones. The CRC was composed of subcommittees for specific aspects of relief efforts, including burial of the deceased, correspondence, distribution of food and water, finances, hospitalizations, and rehabilitation for the injured and public safety. Oh, that was Walter C. Jones. That picture was supposed to show up before the last one.
It's okay.
Now, only a few of the buildings survived and eventually served as landmarks, in a sense, heightened the awesome destruction because it would show in a way in what was no longer there and told one how great the loss was. Within a week, Clara Barton, the pioneer, founder, and president of the American Red Cross, and famous for her responses to crises in the latter half of the 19th century, responded to the disaster and visited Galveston with a team of 8 Red Cross workers. She helps focus national attention on Galveston. This would be the last disaster that Barton responded to, as she was 78 years old at the time and would retire in 1904. After Barton and the team observed the catastrophe, the Red Cross set up a temporary headquarters at a 4-story warehouse in the commercial district. Her presence in Galveston and appeals for contributions resulted in a substantial amount of donations. Overall, 258 barrels, 1,552 pillowcases, and 13 casks of bedding, clothing, crockery, disinfectants, groceries, hardware, medical supplies, and shoes were received at the warehouse, while $17,341 in cash was donated to the Red Cross. Contributions, both monetary gifts and supplies, were estimated to have reached about $120,000. The funds provide survivors with clothes, food, and shelter, but nothing could ease the agony of Galveston residents, many of whom continue to desperately search for their loved ones. This is the last clip involving survivor accounts, and it's actually involving Clara Barton that's mentioned in this.
Mrs. Clara Barton dressed my sister in a Red Cross uniform. Then became, what shall I say, the city caught its second breath. Order had commenced to develop out of chaos.
Now, I know it's been a while since we've spoken about him. Now we're going to put the focus back on Isaac Klein, because I know some of you guys were wondering what happened with him. Isaac Klein, who he, his brother, and 3 children managed to survive, begins to worry and lose hope that his pregnant wife, Cora May, is still alive. For days, he looked for her in the morgues that had turned out and trying to find out if her name was on the ever-growing longer and longer list of the dead that was being published by the Galveston newspapers.
Jesus.
For more than a week, Isaac avoids the Weather Bureau. 9 days after the hurricane, on September 17th, both Isaac and Joseph returned to work, but there is still no word of his wife's fate. As he entered the Levy building, which was spared by the hurricane, he thinks back to his insistence that the island could withstand any storm. He was now tasked to write the official U.S. Weather Bureau assessment of the Galveston disaster, which was a hurricane that had left thousands dead and gave no warning until it was too late. So the question is, just how will he be able to write this story? So, in his autobiography, Isaac Klein said that he raised the storm flag as directed, but did not understand some of the warning signs. He never raised a hurricane flag and neglects to say that none of those warnings included the word hurricane, as it was never part of the forecast he received from Washington, D.C. He also claimed on the morning of the storm he had taken it upon himself to travel along the beach and other low-lying areas, warning people personally of the storm's approach. It is known that around noon on September 8th, he did breach Weather Bureau protocol by making a unilateral decision to issue a hurricane warning without first securing authorization from the Bureau's central office in Washington, D.C. Klein estimated that thousands of lives were saved because of his decision not to wait for approval and actually increase the total of people that he supposedly saved many times over. However, no eyewitnesses ever reported actually seeing Klein personally warning people along the beach, which that is what ultimately led to the legend of Isaac Klein. Writer Eric Larson argued in his book, Isaac's Storm, that Klein did not warn anyone in Galveston prior to the I cannot even say that word, damn it, of his office's hurricane warning.
Issuance?
Yeah, thank you. After finishing his report, he sent it to headquarters in Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., Willis Moore calls Isaac one of the heroic people of that awful hour and wants to make sure that his agency doesn't receive any blame for the carnage. Isaac Klein used all the forecasting tools available at the time, but what he didn't have were predictions from the Cubans. After the Galveston tragedy, the U.S. Weather Bureau lifts its ban on forecasts from Cuban meteorologists. And, the other thing, too, when it came to the warning signs about, involving this hurricane, from what I remember hearing was that there was not the red sky. The barometric pressure wasn't dropping. In fact, it didn't even start dropping until Saturday that day.
Yeah.
Galveston has suffered the greatest natural disaster in U.S. history, but it refuses to fall apart. Within weeks, trolley services are restored. Banks and grocery stores reopen for business. Telegraph lines are back in order. Families continue to search for missing loved ones who might still be trapped within the awful wall of debris. Sunday, September 30th. Isaac's wife has now been missing for nearly a month. Then someone came to get him to tell him that they may have at last found the body of his wife.
Wasn't she pregnant, you said, too?
She was, with their fourth child.
Okay.
She was found under a pile of wreckage where the rest of the family landed after the storm that brought them to safety.
Oh, so she was literally underneath them.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
She was, in fact, identified from a diamond ring that he had given her as an engagement ring.
Oh.
And if you remember, there were all those people that took cover with him, at least 50 people or so. Most of the neighbors who took cover in his house were never heard from again.
Wow.
So most likely they too probably died as well. They were probably his brother and his daughters are probably the only survivors out of from his house, in other words.
Yeah, out of the 50 some.
Yeah.
Wow.
Within a year after the storm, both Isaac and Joseph. Oh, hang on, it's like these. Okay, there we go. Within a year after the storm, both Isaac and Joseph are assigned and transferred to Weather Bureau positions outside of Texas, much to the dismay of their surviving neighbors. In 1901, the center was moved to New Orleans, Louisiana, and Isaac moved with it to be section director for Texas, Oklahoma Territory, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. Now, as for his brother Joseph is transferred to the Weather Bureau in Puerto Rico. Since the hurricane, he never forgave Isaac for failing to heed his warning the night of the storm. So here we have basically to the point where they had this huge disagreement with each other, where at last it finally came to a full fall. If that makes any sense. So, but it was an unforgiving action in Joseph's case. So now that it's 1901, in early August of that year, Klein and his three daughters moved to Crescent City, where he would serve as district forecaster and eventually the principal meteorologist. 1 year later, on August 5th, 1902, he remarried Margaret C. Hayes, and he and his daughters moved into her home on Prytania Street. His passion for improving storm warning systems was a driving force throughout his career. In the wake of the Great Storm, and from the time he moved to New Orleans, he also took up painting and begins a collection of art and antiques, spending his free time restoring them in 1903. He often broke up his annual leave time into half days, enabling him to attend auctions and estate sales. Local families who wanted to dispose of old family collections often went to Klein first, due to his reputation for fair pricing. He restored many of the paintings himself and resold them to make money to purchase others. Isaac and Margaret's shared love of art was probably largely what drew Klein and his second wife to each other. In February of that year, his studies were put to the test when heavy rains foretold dangerous conditions on the Mississippi River. On March 9th, without permission of the bureau chief, Klein issued warnings of an impending record flood stage of 21 feet in New Orleans during the following 3 to 4 weeks and encouraged the construction of a temporary levee extension. He was ordered by superiors to lift the warnings but refused, responding, "It is not better to warn people of approaching disaster sufficiently in advance to enable them to prepare to meet it than to let them be caught unprepared." So you can clearly tell that kind of message alone goes to show that after what he experienced, his loss involving the Galveston hurricane, he obviously was not going to try to make that mistake again.
Right. That's what I was about to say.
Yeah. Klein's decision saved lives. Floodwaters rose to 20.7 feet, a height other experts had denied were possible, and the levee broke. The disaster would surely have been worse without Klein's warnings, and public celebrated him. His supervisors conveniently failed to mention this fact in damage reports after the event. Instead, they planned to remove Klein from his position to save embarrassment on their part, which just selfish of them.
Yeah.
9 months later, Klein received an official communication that his forecasts were not up to acceptable standards, and as a result, he was being transferred to Honolulu, Hawaii territory. Only the intervention of the Louisiana congressional delegation saved him from the transfer. As a result, he also worked for the Weather Bureau for another 3 decades.
Wow.
Now, in March 1913, Bureau Chief Moore resigned under pressure and was replaced. This is a painting of now you're finally going to start seeing more images of Isaac Klein. That is a painting of him at his home in New Orleans that was made back in 1910.
Wow.
Among Klein's most successful forecasts was that of an approaching hurricane in 1915. This is a newly discovered portrait I found of him. That was also made back in 1910. This particular storm possessed the highest wind velocities yet measured on the Gulf Coast, 140 miles per hour.
Ooh.
Nearly every building in New Orleans sustained damage, but surprisingly, only 279 lives were lost, many of those at sea, thanks to the Bureau's storm warnings. I mean, it was still a high number, don't get me wrong, but much less than it was in Galveston.
Yeah.
After the storm, the New Orleans Times Picayune commented, "The intensity of the storm proved the worthiness of Dr. I.M. Klein. Never before, perhaps in the history of the Weather Bureau, have such general warnings have disseminated as were sent out by the local bureau in reference to the disturbance that passed over New Orleans Wednesday evening. Klein was achieving hero status in the Mississippi Delta. There, he developed a stellar reputation over the years. successfully forecasting significant levels of flooding in 1912, 1915, and 1927. In 1926, he wrote the textbook Tropical Cyclones, a collection of his research. That same year, however, sadly, his second wife, Margaret, passes away, to which he never remarries.
Oh.
Isaac Klein also became the chief meteorologist in New Orleans during the Great Mississippi Flood of 1927. Having amassed a sizable collection of her own before their marriage, the probate of her will in 1928 listed specific instructions concerning several artists' work. She willed her extensive collections of paintings to her brother and sister, with the exception of her paintings by Keith, which went to Klein. That same year, he wrote his next textbook, Floods in the Lower Mississippi Valley. In 1929, Klein found a portrait of Abraham Lincoln by Frank Carpenter in an obscure repository of antiques in Washington. After purchasing it, he acted on what he referred to as a hunch and carefully scraped off excess paint applied to the surface of the piece by an unknown artist. His restoration resulted in one of the best-known portraits of Lincoln, which he then loaned to the Cabildo in New Orleans. His remaining years with the Weather Bureau were completely quiet, but he retained a place of respect in the community. This is a newly discovered newspaper I found of him. That is a newspaper of him that was and photo of him from 1933.
Oh, wow.
And it just goes to show, even his title, Dr. Klein Saves Lives by Watching Hurricane Tides. It is said that locals used to watch the gray-haired gentleman walk from his home in the French Quarter to the bureau office to see if he carried an umbrella. Local lore credits him with the saying, "Don't put the rain in the forecast until it starts, and don't take it out until it stops." This was obviously a newspaper article when they were celebrating his 70th birthday. Now, in 1934, by that time well respected and highly admired in New Orleans, Klein received an honorary doctorate from Tulane University.
Oh, wow.
Now, Klein retired from the Weather Bureau in 1935 after 53 years of service. He was fond of saying that he was older than the Weather Bureau. Now, although he wanted to continue working, Klein was required after working 53 years, and due to his age, then at 74 years old, he petitioned to extend his career, citing his ability to predict tropical storms and his desire to contribute to the development of the hurricane warning system. Though he begrudgingly accepted retirement, it provided him with the time to dedicate to his love of art. He remained in New Orleans and indulged his longtime interest in art, both by painting and by opening a small art shop called the Art House. This right here is a 1940 photo of him, at his art house.
Wow.
That was an antique and art gallery located at 633 Peter Street in the French Quarter in January 1936. Well, like I said, this was taken a few years later in 1940. But either way, even here's the other thing that should be a very important note. You know, by the time he retired in 1935, and by the time he opened the art house in January of 1936, unfortunately, because it was that same exact era, the carnage of World War I and the chaos of the Great Depression had shattered the optimism that greeted the 20th century. Still, he clung to his faith in science as an agent of hope, as he published multiple books about art. This is a picture. Now, this is a photo of him right here at an art event. I think that was taken in 1946, I believe. Specializing in early American portraits and Chinese bronzes, the pursuit made him a wealthy man. In addition to collecting artwork, he continued his work restoring paintings and antique glassware in the studio as well. Klein was the first to admit that his hobby was as much inspired by the connections it provided him to the upper levels of society as the sheer love of the work itself. He became a fixture of the French Quarter, known for his warm smile and welcoming handshake. The scientist did not leave, however, his dedication to weather entirely in the past. In addition, in addition to continuing his meteorological work, he published a scientific monograph, A Century of Progress in the Study of Cyclones, in 1942. It was considered one of the most important works of its kind at the time, one of which was Storms, Floods, and Sunshine, published in 1945. Now, in the book, he shares choice paintings and other works of art appealed to me. I bought paintings, porcelains, bric-a-brac, and small pieces of furniture soon after my arrival as a hobby. Now, in 1946, Isaac's brother Joseph, this is a new picture I found of him just recently. Isaac's brother Joseph discusses the storm and its aftermath in his autobiography, When the Heavens Frowned. In 1953, Klein became very ill and had to sell his beloved art house. In spite of his illness, he continued moving forward throughout the last few years of his life. Isaac Klein died on August 3rd, 1955, at the age of 93, as a new hurricane approached the Gulf.
Kind of appropriate.
Yeah, in a way it is. And this is a news article of when he died. His brother Joseph died 8 days later on August 11th, on August 11th at the age of 84. And this is a newspaper article of him next.
8 days, crackers at it.
Yeah. Isaac is buried in Metairie Cemetery in New Orleans in a plot belonging to the family of one of his daughters. No headstone bears his name or hints to the incredible man who rests there. After his death, he was passed into Galveston lore until author Eric Larson re-examined that faithful day in 1900, which became the basis for his book, Isaac's Storm. I mean, just knowing basically the legend involving Isaac Klein and just knowing the fact of all the mistakes that he made, but also all the successes that he made. Was he someone that should be frowned upon? No, I really don't think so. Because even after the great hurricane of 1900 nearly wiped out their town, Galvestonians remain loyal to their chief weather expert.
And that's the important thing.
Yeah.
See, the best way I would describe it, there's a lot of, you talk to a lot of the Galveston historians, they probably would all tell you the same thing, is that, I don't think Isaac, in spite of what happened, of what occurred, I don't think Isaac Klein should be blamed for what happened, simply because he was just simply a product of his time. No matter what, at the end, he was a true Texas hero.
He did the best with what he had.
Yeah, absolutely. So, going back to Galveston now, as Galveston wakes up from its nightmare, very difficult decisions must still be made. People of Galveston then had to make a determination, obviously, like, do we rebuild or do we leave? So, yeah, they made this determination whether to leave Galveston or to stay and rebuild their city. Throughout town, railroads offered free rides for any of the survivors who wanted to get off the island, to which a lot of people did leave and they didn't come back. They never came back for their possessions, as they were so horrified by what they've seen and what they've lost. So the idea of whether to leave Galveston or stay and rebuild their city, clearly you could see that a lot of people did leave. As a result, 2,000 people left the city after the storm and never returned.
Yeah.
Many, however, the vast majority of Galveston stayed and do what they can to rebuild their city. Those who stayed showed how much effort they were willing to put into for those that did leave, obviously I clearly don't mock them for it, but for those who stayed, though, showed really how much effort they were willing to put in to build this from nothing to a new and improved community. So, of course, obviously, They had a lot of work to put in, to rebuild their city. It would take years to recover from the hurricane of 1900. So survivors set up temporary shelters in surplus United States Army tents along the shore. They were so numerous that observers began referring to Galveston as the White City on the beach, and that is a photo of one of the tent cities. In the first 2 weeks following the storm, approximately 17,000 people resided in these tents, vacant storerooms, or public buildings. Others constructed so-called storm lumber homes, using salvageable material from the debris to build shelters. The building committee, with a budget of $450,000, opened applications for money to rebuild and repair homes. Here's another example of the tents. Accepted applicants were given enough money to build a cottage with 3 12 by 12 foot rooms. By March 1901, 1,073 cottages were built.
Wow.
And 1,109 homes had been repaired.
Wow.
Winifred Bonfils, there we go, a young journalist working for William Randolph Hearst, was the first reporter on the line at the hurricane's ground zero in Galveston. She delivered an exclusive set of reports, and Hearst sent relief supplies by train. By September 12th, Galveston received its first post-storm mail. The next day, basic water service was restored, and Western Union began providing minimal telegraph service. Within 3 weeks of the storm, cotton was again being shipped out of the port.
Wow.
A number of cities, businesses, organizations, and individuals made monetary donations toward rebuilding Galveston. By September 15th, less than 1 week after the storm struck Galveston, contributions totaled about $1.5 million. More than $134,000 in donations poured in from New York City alone. 5 other major cities, St. Louis, Chicago, Boston, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia, had also donated at least $15,000 by September 15th. By state, the largest donations included $228,000 from New York, $67,000 from Texas, $56,000 from Illinois, $53,000 from Massachusetts, and $52,000 from Missouri. Wow. Contributions also came from abroad, such as from Canada, Mexico, France, Germany, England, and South Africa, including $10,000 each from Liverpool and Paris.
Wow.
Andrew Carnegie made the largest personal contribution, $10,000, while an additional $10,000 was donated by a steel company.
Yeah.
But now to rebuild, I forgot to mention this. Although a vast majority of a vast majority of residents did leave Galveston, for many others, it wasn't just about wanting to rebuild the city. They had roots here and livelihoods at stake. Even with all the destruction, it was still the richest city in Texas. A lot of people had lived there for a very long amount of time, with all the different businesses that they had. So I think, in my personal opinion, that in some way, shape, or form, that the city was still salvageable. But to rebuild, residents, now fully aware of how precarious its position was, want a stronger and much safer city. Hang on 1 second, guys. Linda just stepped away. She said she just wanted to message me what was going on. Give me 1 second here, guys.
Yep, no problem.
So, to rebuild, residents, now fully aware of how precarious its position was, want a stronger and much safer city, as they realized that if they were to survive at all, they would have to have some sort of prevention and protection of future storms from causing destruction like that of the 1900 hurricane. Many improvements to the island were made. Galveston then answers the challenge with a perfect solution. A board of engineers formed to work out the specifics of protecting Galveston from the sea issued its recommendations in January 1902 to build a seawall along the Gulf Coast in order to deflect incoming waves and raise the elevation of the entire island. The city of Galveston hired a team of 3 engineers to design structures for protection from future storms. Alfred Noble, Henry Martin Robert, and H.C. Ripley. Unfortunately, I was unable to find any photographs of them, so that's why no photos are showing up. Hang on one second here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, she's just letting me know what's going on. Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty fast with this. The 3 engineers recommended and designed a seawall. In November, residents of Galveston overwhelmingly approved a bond referendum to fund building a seawall, passing the measure of a vote of 3,085 by 20 to 21.
Yeah, one.
Yeah. Work on the wall and rebuilding begins that year, like I said, in 1902, under the direction of Robert. So this was a tremendous building period, for that time, or really any time for the most part. I mean, they built this giant wall, as you can see in this construction photo. It shows that it was at a height of 17 feet tall, 16 feet wide at the base, and 5 feet wide at the top. And it had a curved surface facing the Gulf.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
I mean, the reason for a wall that high, I mean, like I said, they built this bridge to a wall of 17 feet. Why? Because the maximum storm surge caused by the 1900 storm was just under 16 feet. So the idea then would be when giant waves came in, they would go up and then fall back on the next incoming wave.
It's a quarter pipe.
What's that?
It's a quarter pipe, like skateboarders use.
Yeah, it does have that resemblance, but like I said, obviously this was meant to protect Galveston for the most part. But now the seawall alone, it cost over $1.5 million, and much of the city's tax base still lay in ruins. But a bond referendum to fund the wall passed by a landslide, and it weighed 20 tons per linear foot.
Ooh.
The first segment of the wall is completed in July 1904 and stretches across 3 miles of shoreline.
Does it go all the way around the island then, or?
Well, at this time, it will only stretch about 3 miles, but not necessarily, because now this also answers your next question. The first test of the seawall's use was in 1909 when a 9-foot tide floated to the island from a hurricane that came ashore about 80 miles to the south.
Oh.
Sadly, 5 died in Galveston, but were all in areas not protected by the seawall. Now, construction of the seawall continued for several decades, with the final segment finished in 1963. So, almost 60 years that they were building this wall, that they added additions to it. So,
can you imagine, though, right? Can you imagine if they wouldn't have built that wall? By now, the whole place would have been washed away.
It would have. It definitely would have, no doubt. And you'll see later on that several other hurricanes have since hit Galveston. So, upon completion, the seawall in its entirety stretched for more than 10 miles. It was probably, one of the best constructions for that particular area, especially at that particular time.
It looks good.
Another dramatic effort to protect Galveston was its raising, also recommended by Noble, Robert, and Ripley. In order to support the wall, the city itself had to be raised to push enough mud and sand behind the wall to support it. Approximately 15 million cubic yards of sand was dredged from the Galveston shipping channel to raise the city, some sections by as much as 13 to 17 feet.
So the shipping channel went down.
Now, Now, behind the wall, the plan is to raise the elevation on the Gulf side to meet the top of the seawall. So then the grade will slope down 1 foot for every 1,500 feet from the Gulf. Street by street, engineers mark the new ground level with stripes painted on telephone poles. Property owners raise their buildings to match and build new foundations beneath them, or resign themselves to having their first floor rooms turned into a basement. So here's some of the examples of the grade raising involving these houses that were put on stilts or other types of material. Over 2,100 buildings were raised in the process of pumping sand underneath, including houses, churches, sidewalks, sewers, and gas lines. Everything has to go up. The ground beneath Galveston sloped from 8 feet above sea level just behind the wall to 22 feet along the island's new crest. So workers at that time only had the most basic construction tools. One of the most challenging, as shown in this photo, is the 3,000 short ton St. Patrick's Church, a huge ornate building in the center of town. Now, from what I heard was that there were mules put on all corners of the church and were on turnstile, and each mule had to walk at the same time. As what they were trying to do was to make sure they didn't have the structures get off kilter.
Right.
Being slowly raised on jack screws, each building must be kept level. If not, it can break apart. According to historian David G. McComb, the grade of 500 blocks had been raised by 1911. The seawall was listed among the National Register of Historic Places on August 18, 1977, while the seawall and raising of the island were jointly named a National Historical Civil Engineering Landmark by the American Society of Civil Engineers, exactly almost over 100 years later, on October 11, 2001. Now, in addition to raising the buildings, the next step is filling up space under the raised buildings. So they built dikes around sections of the city, and then they built these dredges that would collect the bottom of the Gulf, bring it in, and pump it in and fill up certain areas. 16 million cubic yards of sand and slurry are pumped in from the Gulf, which, this took weeks, if not months, to dry. And because, not only is it just the sand that you'd had to worry about, so were sea creatures. So there was also the smell of these dying marine animals from the sea. Oh, there's the other picture. I was wondering where the other one went. So then finally, after 6 long and muddy years, the grade raising is officially completed. I mean, seeing Galveston fully rebuilt with the grade raising. I mean, you can imagine just the amount of patience this must have taken, because, like I said, this grade raising wasn't truly completed until 1910.
Right.
The grade raising and the seawall are engineering marvels, but the one thing that simply can't be rebuilt is Galveston's ranking as the brightest star on the Texas coast. That honor was about to be claimed by Galveston's old rival, fueled by a discovery that would change not only Texas, but the whole country. Now, in 1901, an oil gusher named Spindletop is discovered near Houston. The oil boom gives new urgency to Houston's dream of building a shipping channel. That's bad news for Galveston, whose own shipping channel had always been its trump card in the rivalry between the cities. As a result, Houston, as that hole up the road, then became the major port and the major city in the region. In 1914, the Houston Ship Channel opened, which was much more protected and has much more land area for the servicing of shipping and processing. Houston soon outstripped Galveston as Texas's center of commerce, and the island faded into obscurity. The seawall itself, however, will once again be put through the ultimate test as history somewhat repeats itself. Which just before I get to that, I'm just going to say they built this. I forgot to mention when it came to the grade raising, they basically made this a huge success, and then they talked about it, laughed about it afterwards. But either way, like I said, you're about to see kind of a repeat of what happened of what happened to Galveston years later. So in 1915, when there was another hurricane that was similar and almost equal in strength, power, and track to the 1900 storm, struck Galveston, testing the integrity of the new seawall. Now, unlike the 1900 storm, these are actual photographs of the hurricane in progress, and these are waves. These are waves actually crashing into the seawall.
Oh wow! Okay.
They're black, aren't they?
Yeah, they look like trees or bushes, but no, that is water. That's the storm surge.
I know. I was gonna say it looks like a dust storm to me.
It does.
Yeah.
No,
very scary. It's very scary stuff. That isn't it?
Yeah,
but it's in the second one, you can see how it sucked the water into it.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's crashing right into the seawall.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, despite that, the 1915 hurricane lasted longer than the 1900 hurricane and was of comparable intensity, which brought the storm surge up to 12 feet. The seawall and timely warnings prevented a disaster of a similar scale. Here are some of the aftermath pictures of it. Although 53 people on Galveston Island lost their lives in the 1915 storm, this was a great reduction from the thousands who died in 1900, as the seawall protects most of the city. Here is a photo of the seawall after the hurricane. So it just goes to show that, there are still buildings, several still destroyed, but a good portion of it is now protected. Now, there is no doubt that Galveston is a safer place than it was before the Great Hurricane, but its former glory has slipped away. Other powerful tropical cyclones would test the effectiveness of the seawall. Now, hurricanes strike the coast several times over the years in 1916, 1919, 1932, 1934, 1941, 42, 43, 45, 47, 49, Hurricane Audrey in 1957, Hurricane Deborah in 1959, Hurricane Carla in 1961, Hurricane Fern in 1971, Tropical Storm Delia in 1973, Hurricane Alicia in 1983. There was also one hurricane that didn't have a name, so it just said 1987, Hurricane Jerry in 1989, Tropical Storm Allison in 2001, Hurricane Claudette in 2003, Hurricane Rita in 2005, Hurricane Humberto in 2007, Hurricane Ike in 2008, Tropical Storm Harvey in 2017, and Hurricane Laura and Tropical Storm Beta in 2020, and finally Hurricane Nicholas in 2021.
Wow.
Carla, now I didn't have a lot of information for each one, but these I did bring up some of the most notorious ones. Carla primarily caused severe coastal flood-related damage to structures unprotected by the city. Following Hurricane Alicia, the Corps of Engineers estimated that the seawall prevented about $100 million in damage. Despite the seawall, Ike left extensive destruction in Galveston due to storm surge, with preliminary estimates including that up to $2 billion in damage occurred to beaches, dwellings, hospitals, infrastructure, and ports. Damage in Galveston and surrounding areas prompted proposals for improvements to the seawall, including the addition of floodgates and more seawalls, which I'm going to say real quick, when it comes to Hurricane Ike in 2008, I actually remember when Hurricane Ike struck Galveston. I mean, I was in high school then, and I was watching the weather. I remember watching a lot of this live when that was occurring. And it occurred obviously on a weekend. It was probably like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, but yet they were still broadcasting live of what they were going through. So, and I remember I remember it like it was yesterday, no doubt.
I like that you can see the eye of it right there too in that
Yeah,
picture.
you can.
Yeah, it's a good picture, there, isn't it?
Absolutely. Now, we mentioned all these hurricanes that have hit over the years. As far as the most recent one, so we just made a few descriptions of these other hurricanes. Then, on July 8th, 2024, Hurricane Beryl makes a direct hit. Portions of the Strand Historic District in Galveston were left underwater. Rain totals reached 4 to 8 inches near Galveston, and Houston saw over 9 inches. The storm surge was reported to surprisingly only be about 5 feet. Though a storm surge did affect parts of Galveston, Beryl was nowhere as strong as the 1900 storm. Beryl, while affecting the area, only reached its highest strength as a Category 1. Now, to commemorate the hurricane's 100th anniversary in 2000, the 1900 Storm Committee was established and began meeting in January 1998. Yeah, that is a photo of the commemoration symbol.
That's cool.
The committee and then Mayor of Galveston, Roger Quiroga, planned several public events in remembrance of the storm, including theatrical plays, an educational fundraising luncheon, a candlelight memorial service, a 5K run, the rededication of a commemorative Clara Barton plaque, and the dedication of the Place of Remembrance monuments. Now, this 10-foot bronze sculpture on the Galveston seawall portrays a family, a father, mother, and child clinging together. One of the man's arms is reaching for the sky, and the other is around his wife. She is cradling their baby in her arms.
Can almost be on it.
As the dedication of the Place of Remembrance monument, the Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word sang Queen of the Waves and placed 10 roses and 90 other flowers around the monument to commemorate the 10 nuns and 90 children who perished after the hurricane destroyed the St. Mary's Orphans Asylum. Now, the speakers at the candlelight memorial service included U.S. Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, who was born in Galveston, Administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, D. James Baker, or also known as NOAA, which is our weather service, and CBS Evening News anchor Dan Rather, who gained fame for his coverage during Hurricane Carla in 1961.
Right.
The Daily News published a special 100th anniversary commemorative edition newspaper on September 3rd, 2000. Now, you guys are probably wondering, when was the last survivor of this hurricane? The last reported survivor of the Galveston hurricane of 1900, Maud Connick of Wharton, Texas, died on November 14, 2004, at the claimed age of 116.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, although the 1900 census and other records indicate she was about 10 years younger than that. So either way, she was either 116 or 106, but she definitely died in her hundreds. The 1900 storm, as it is still known in South Texas, remains the deadliest natural disaster in American history. More than 300 cyclonic storms have made landfall in the United States since 1900, and all of them together claim fewer lives than the Galveston hurricane did in one terrible night. So, as far as today Galveston is a sleepy resort town, population 50,000. Yet, after more than a century, the memory of 1900 still shakes the city. Galveston is also rumored to be one of the most haunted cities in the state of Texas, with numerous ghost stories associated with the hurricane, and offers both historical and paranormal tours. The unsettled souls of the ghosts of Galveston still haunt the places of their final moments, a continuous reminder of the deadliest storm in our nation's history. The seawall. Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. The seawall continues to do its job, which has protected the old portion of Galveston from every hurricane that has ever hit the island. Many, especially the descendants of those who survived, believe someday another destructive hurricane will arrive, and no matter what improvements have been made, the Gulf will once again swallow Galveston.
Wow.
You know, modern residents of Galveston often hear about why live in such an invulnerable area, and I think we've kind of learned. I think they obviously. Sorry, I'm sorry. What was that, Chris?
Nothing. I just said wow.
Oh, I thought you said something else, but yeah, like I said, they often are asked, about why live in such an invulnerable area, and I think it was just at the end of the day, I think most Galvestonians may, and also other areas that are prone to disaster, is that we've been kind of given the task and gift that we're able to maybe not exactly fight it, but know how to deal with it, by making such improvements against the most powerful force in nature. And that undoubtedly is Mother Nature, of course. And and a lot of these people down in Galveston have said that there is a certain charm that keeps people there and keeps them willing to risk their lives every June through November. Now, when people say when they're often asked why live in such in an invulnerable, that's one of the Galveston markers right there. 1900 storm Galveston marker. But anyways, a lot of them going back to why live such an invulnerable area is that one historian once said in a very humorous kind of way, and in fact, this final slide actually kind of goes along with what I'm saying. But Galveston has been very fortunate for a very long time, and best thing is, that hope that your luck continues, and to end this, to kind of as a response to this.
Linda McDonald's grandfather was an expert on that subject.
And my grandfather said, because when you know the story of the 1900 storm, when you wake up, if you're lucky enough to still be in your bed with your house around you, then you get down on your knees and you thank God, because it could all be changed. It could all be gone overnight, the way it was one weekend in September in 1900 in Galveston.
That was powerful.
And we are officially done, guys. We made it.
Ah, well done.
Well done, Nick. Well done.
Great job, Nick. That was an awesome presentation. I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad you did. I really appreciate it. Again, guys, hang on.
You can make it so we can see.
I don't know where that came from. But I did want to say to you guys, thank you guys so much, for coming on for these 2 days. I mean, I know for some of you Chris, I know this was kind of a last minute thing, but this was something that I thought was very important to talk about, because again, this was exactly occurred 125 years ago, and I think it was something that definitely needed to be talked about this year. So, but it's like, as you guys have seen, it's probably one of my most powerful presentations I think I ever put together.
Yeah, it's very, very good. And the thing is, people should never forget.
Yeah,
no.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. You've got to remind people sometimes about what sacrifices people have made, and the environments they're living in. Sometimes people go and live at these places and they haven't got a clue. And it's all about what made that town or the city or the village or whatever. It's all in its history, and it's all about what they've done for them.
Right.
They've rebuilt it. And they've made it safe. And people have died, obviously, and it's been awful. But now they've made it possible for them to go forward in a more safer environment.
Yeah, I was telling Nick last night when we were talking on the phone that while I was waiting a couple minutes, because I was having a lot of technical issues last night at the end of the show, and I had jumped off because I couldn't get a reconnection no matter how much I tried. While going through my computer, I found my old file of places that I've actually went back and did the research on for haunted memoirs, and the St. Mary's Orphanage in Galveston was on that one. In that file, and that file is for it. I put the locations in that file because they were just too, to me, too emotionally heartbreaking. I'm an empath medium, so reading and everything, and there was times I teared up during Nick's presentation, and I just couldn't. I couldn't do it myself about talking about the locations, and I thought it was just really, really cool that he brought it up, and it sparked as soon as he said something. So I wrote it down real quickly in my notebook and was thinking about it, and I was like, wait a minute, and I went back and I found my file, and it was in there. So
cool.
It's a very powerful story, no doubt, and this is actually the reason why I turned off my green screen. That book that I was telling you guys about that Eric Larson wrote called Isaac Storm, I actually have a copy of it myself right here.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And it's surprisingly I've not had time to read it yet, but I've not forgotten about it. But I am planning on reading this real soon, and a lot of people say that this is definitely one of Eric Larson's best accomplishments. In fact, one person even calls it the Jaws of Hurricane Yarns. So it obviously shows that it's a very powerful book. And what's also interesting, and I don't know if you know about this, Linda, since you do a lot of history, this is in fact written by the same author, Eric Larson, who also did Devil in the White City for H.H. Holmes in Chicago. And the funny thing is, we actually had to read that book back when I was in high school. That was part of our homework assignments.
H.H. Holmes?
I've heard of Eric Larson. I think I actually might have a couple of his books. I'm not for sure, but I've heard of him. But that's pretty cool. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I got this. We got this from a Barnes and Noble, so this was probably a more updated version of the book. But either way, again, because I've been so swamped with these audio projects, I haven't really been able to do a lot. But I already promised myself as soon as I'm done with these projects, I'm going to start reading it. So I'm really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to it. Yeah. And Eric Larson, too, he's also featured in one of the Galveston documentaries. In fact, he does a lot of the talking himself, obviously, because he did a lot of the research himself. And, it'd be really cool if there would be some way. I don't know if he's got like social media or anything, but I think it would be great to have on at some point as a guest sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
It'd be cool if you could get him and Kathleen on there at the same time.
Yeah, that would. That would actually be kind of interesting.
Whether you could or not is a whole nother matter, but I mean, it would be.
Now, one other thing I wanted to point out, too, also when it came to the Galveston hurricane, not only because, again, I've had such a fascinating story, and I was telling Linda this on the phone, that for such a tragic event like this, such an infamous one, it's amazing to me how they've never made a movie out of this hurricane, like the same way, like how they did it with the sinking of Titanic.
Yeah.
How has there not been a movie made for Galveston?
Yes, I'm surprised as well with everything that you've showed us. That's got the making of some movie, hasn't it, somewhere? Even if it's a love story, or even if it's about rescuers, and there's got to be something there somewhere, hasn't there?
Well, especially with Isaac. Well, with Isaac Klein, because we weren't.
Yeah.
He would. I could already see, regardless whether it would be a love story or not. No doubt, he would be the main. That character would be the main focus of that movie. As far as the hurricane is concerned, and I've checked almost every year to see if there's ever any plans of a movie ever being made about Galveston. And as far as from what I've seen, there are no plans of making a movie.
Well, let's make one, Nick.
If it was that easy, that would be like tons of, that would be a huge budget, and we would have to have like an ensemble cast for that matter, like they did with Titanic.
Look, we have people right here. Just get the whole thing.
I mean, I won't. I mean,
careful.
I mean, there are like I know one of the documentaries does like a lot of reenactments, like in the film, in that documentary, but it's just not the same. I'd rather
Yeah,
have it
yeah,
as
totally.
an
I know. I'm
actual
just
movie itself. So that's why I'm really surprised they have not had. There's never been any discussions about it, because that's also that's clearly a historic event that not only
Full.
it's just never been done before. You have these movies out there, especially historical ones, that are trying to come up with new ideas. And again, I'm just surprised that they have not pursued the idea of wanting to make a film out of it, because that would have been a new idea right there.
maybe you're speaking it into existence.
Yeah,
It seems like that happens every time I get a good new original idea, and then here comes the movie or the book, and it's like,
maybe,
I thought of that.
maybe somebody will see this and like say, hey, what was it, James Cameron that did Titanic, I think.
Yeah,
let him do it.
Right? Nick can do it. He kind of looked like that little kid.
I'm still kind of taken up by that. I'm not gonna, okay. So when you weren't here for this, but when we were talking last night about the St. Mary's Orphanage, and when I was showing a lot of the pictures, including the sketches that were made of the nuns that were trying to save these kids, Victoria points out even though it was a sketch, she points out that apparently one of the kids looks like me. And I was
I heard that.
Yeah,
I couldn't really tell because there's the screen was like there's a green. It was flickering green, so it was all different colors. So I couldn't really tell what the pictures were and what they had.
But she shrunk this kid down to like 8 years old. This Nick down to like 8 or however old that kid would be.
Wow!
When they first said that to me, I mean, obviously, I was like, is this supposed to be some kind of joke or something like that? But then, I'm like, no, check out that picture that you just showed. In fact, what I'm going to do real quick before we get off, because just so you guys get the idea of which photo it was, and I got the slide right here, so I'm going to share the screen one final time, and you guys tell me of your personal opinion of how it looks. So give me a second here. Oh wait, I almost clicked on the wrong tab. That would have been on my Facebook.
It's okay, Nick.
You can always add it to your Facebook and see what everybody else thinks.
Yeah. Well, I got it ready. So you guys tell me what you think when you see that. Hey, Nikki, good to see you here.
Hey, Nikki.
No.
But you guys tell me what you think when you see. I know it's still kind of small on the screen.
The little kid in the water.
Yeah, yes, definitely you. That's
yeah. From what I can see, yeah, definitely.
When I looked at that, I mean, like you should have you couldn't see me, but you could hear me. I was like, oh my god, like when I said that, I couldn't believe it. And I mean, it kind of freaked. I'm not gonna lie, that kind of freaked me out a little bit. I just thought
we had a connection. So.
Yeah, I was like, could that explain why I have such a connection to Galveston, even though none of my family ever came from that town? Mm-hmm. Am I somehow reincarnated? Like from one of the, I have no idea. But I will point this out, though. There's one very important note that I almost forgot, and it's involving when it comes to this hurricane. I also clearly see the number 93 involved with this hurricane, and it makes a lot of sense. The number 93, I think, when it came to the orphans, there were 93 children, and only 3 of them survived. Isaac Klein, he was 93 years old when he died.
Wow.
And then maybe this is just probably coincidental, but at the age I'm at, I was born in 1993. So once again, you have the number 93 to it.
But you do get that, don't you? It's like certain things happen at certain years, and you can go back in time, and things are happening in other places. Disaster, even down to the presidents, how old they were when they died, where they're related. what year it was. You can look into all that, and it's all interconnected. So you're most probably interconnected with this. That's why you're telling the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, indeed, I did get it. Like I said, I got a lot of it from. I may have gotten a lot of the information either from the documentaries or Wikipedia or from some of the other sites that had, the best valuable information. But I was at least able to kind of again put it together and sort of make it my own work.
Yeah,
But-
you have. You've done
Just
that
like I
very
did.
well.
Yeah, just like what you do, Linda, because I've seen you do the exact same thing that I do.
So what made you do this, Nick? I mean, originally, what attracted you to the Galveston thing, if you know?
I think honestly, because as much as I've loved the paranormal and history, which I've been loving now for 20 years exactly,
Right.
believe it or not, I've had such a fascination with meteorology even longer than that. And of course, we've kind of come to realize that both the paranormal history and weather in some way, shape, or form do all come together.
Yeah.
And it was only probably about the time I was in high school that I really started studying a lot more of the historic storms. And while there are many different historic storms that I've covered, including some of these on this show, the Galveston hurricane, again, once again being the deadliest hurricane in American history, that was the one that really drew me completely. And as like I said, this was probably not only like a documentary, but this was almost probably as close as I could ever get to kind of like writing my own book about the Galveston hurricane. And that's why I've been so fascinated. I mean, don't get me wrong. It is truly a heartbreaking story.
Yes.
And like I said, there have been a few times that I've teared up myself from it, but it's still just an incredible story to learn, for the historic community, no doubt.
Hey, Adrian.
Hey, Adrian. But I think that's what got me interested in particular with the Galveston hurricane.
Makes sense. I was just wondering if, like, you just were like, "Ooh, I got to study this," or if there was.
Well, and Kathleen also was not wrong from last night because she said that almost every corner of Galveston, no doubt at all, is fully haunted. I mean, you can't really go and invest if you have the opportunity to investigate a location that, unless it was built afterwards, you can't go to a location or investigate a building that survived the 1900 storm without associating the hurricane itself.
Yeah.
That's just the way how things are, when it comes to a city like Galveston.
Yeah, she says if you truly hunt, you'd find something. So
yeah,
you truly investigate.
Yep, and I knew Adrian. She said she's been there herself. That's her favorite vacation spot. Adrian would have, in fact, I offered her she wanted to come on originally, but Adrian would have joined, but unfortunately she had to work yesterday and earlier this afternoon.
It's only Adrian, it's okay. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. Love you, Adrian. Love you.
Careful, Chris. She's watching.
I know. I know. I have to give everybody crap.
Kind of off topic.
Yeah, go ahead.
Off topic. You've been to Fox Hollow Farm, right?
Surprisingly, no, I've not. But I always wanted to go to Fox Hollow Farm and where it's located. Because, although I live in the Chicago area, I'm just literally an hour away from the Illinois-Indiana border. So, in that case, I would say that's only maybe about 3 hours away from me. So it's not terribly far. But I've always wanted to go.
Okay. For some reason, I was thinking that you were there. That's my location I'm doing this week on my show.
Oh, Fox Hollow Farm. Awesome. Yeah, that was where serial killer Herb Baumeister lived and committed his murders.
So what part of Indiana is that? Or is that Indiana then?
It is in... Oh, gosh, you'd ask me that question right off the top of my head.
I'm sorry. I mean, just northern, southern. You don't got to be exact.
It's in the northern part, I believe.
Okay.
It's one of the locations that was on my list, and I've done it. But since then, I have lost the file.
Fair. Well, no. We
Look,
might be planning a trip to Indiana, Nick. So
I got to redo it also, and I'm like, oh gosh, and I ended up getting the book on it, and I have yet to read it. So.
Well, here's a question for you, because since I'm just gonna keep this just for a few more. No, it's fine, because I'm just gonna just take this for a few more minutes before we end things. But did you ever watch? Did you ever watch that show called Paranormal Witness? You ever watched it?
Uh,
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
They
I think
actually, yeah, it was like from like 15 years ago. It ran between 2011 2016,
okay.
and they did an episode of Fox Hollow Farm, and
Oh.
not only that, the family that owns that farmhouse, which obviously they were interviewed themselves, they also interviewed a detective who was involved in the murders themselves when when Herb Baumeister was still living there. And here's what I'll tell you quick firsthand of like what he said about the investigation that he conducted. He said the Baumeister case was one of the biggest cases, obviously, in the state of Indiana. It was a big part of his life as well. And he said not only when he was actually offered to return to that house when the family called, not only did it reminded him of all the events that took place back in 1996, but it brought those memories back to him immediately. So, long story short, Lynn and Chris, I'm just going to say this real quick. Of course,
Yeah.
Linda will talk more about this herself, but when they had this former detective go in, they were told how her Baumeister, selectively chose his victims from gay bars downtown under the belief and idea that they were going to go for a swim in the indoor swimming pool. Now, the investigator also said that as he was walking around the house, again, it felt like he was back in 96. He remembered when he was actually there investigating and photographing the crime scene that Mr. Baumeister had several mannequins placed in and around his house, including the pool area in various poses. It just seemed really weird, bizarre, and certainly somewhat creepy. It seemed like a setup, to lure his victims there. And he said that they believe that Mr. Baumeister gained control of his victims through the use of alcohol and/or drugs, brought him into the pool, asked them to participate in autoerotic asphyxia, and then killed these individuals through strangulation. Eventually, buried their bodies out in the wooded areas near his yard. And in the end, when everything was coming to light, an arrest warrant was made, and they were actually out searching for him. Mr. Baumeister fled to Ontario, Canada, where he eventually killed himself with a gunshot wound to the head.
Yeah, and it's in Westfield, Chris, Westfield, Indiana. And
Okay.
Upon redoing my research on it, they just found 10 more bodies on the property.
Holy crap.
No.
Wow. That's something new for me.
And
Wow.
I also found a firsthand witness statement just recently. Her father went missing, and her father was found on the property.
Oh my
That's
God.
unbelievable. And that's the other thing too, is I almost forgot. In spite, it's incredible to think that in spite of the creepiness of the mannequins too, still it's like his victims must have thought it was kind of cool. Like it was kind of like a spa, but I'm sure they had no idea of knowing or even realizing that it was actually a killing ground. It was a trap, literally.
Right.
Wow.
And what makes this even more creepy is, and I don't know if you've seen it yourself, Linda. If you haven't, I'll have to send it to you.
Yeah,
There
send
is
it to me. I can't remember
Yeah.
that one.
Well, not only that, there is actually an interview of Herb Baumeister, because I think he worked for like a construction road company or something like that. And there was an interview of him from 1996, before he got caught, talking about like trying to figure out how they could take care of roadkill and stuff like that. And it's so eerie to watch because he's talking like he's just like any other normal human being. Well, at the same time, like off camera and stuff, and days prior, he had been murdering people in his home.
Yeah.
So it is such an unsettling clip to watch. But did you ever see that, Linda? Did you ever watch it?
No, I haven't. And he
I'll have
was
to send-
actually an owner of a Save-A-Lot strand in Indianapolis.
Yeah, that's what it was. But if I'm able to find that clip, I'll send it to you so you can watch it, because that might give you that will.
Can I
Yeah, I'll send it to you too, Lynn. It gives you basically an inside view, probably one of the best I would say that interview of Herb Baumeister is probably the most perfect example of a serial killer hiding his true colors and presenting himself like he's just like any other person here in the in the suburb areas.
What people were he killing? Was he killing women or men?
Men.
He was killing men.
And he would go to like the gay bars, and he would lure these men in for like saying they had a room for sale or for rent and stuff like that. And they would come to his home. They would see the indoor pool, go for a swim, and he would strangle them. And it is said up in one of the apartments above, I think it's a part of the house.
Yeah.
He ended up going up into there and unaliving somebody in that apartment. So most of it though was done in the pool, and it was all men, ranging from different ages.
Not sexually. It wasn't a sexual thing then.
Yeah, it was. Like I said, they were asked. They were asked to participate in an autoerotic asphyxia. I think it was later turned out that he was actually bisexual because, believe it or not, Herb Baumeister was married and he had kids. And when he committed these murders, it would be when his family was not there, when he was just by himself at the house, and that's when he would go to the gay bars.
Oh.
Yeah, and then he
That's
also.
what I was going to ask. Would his kid just be up like walking and be like,
No.
somebody again? Okay, and yeah, I don't mean that in a bad way, but it was just like, okay, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it was also street men too. There was a couple of street men that he ended up.
Yeah.
Too, and so, and also in my research, there was different parts of the house that he strangled them too, and then not just the pool.
Wow.
So,
but I'll cover all this on Saturday.
Yeah, she'll describe more about it on Saturday.
On Saturday? That's what I was going to ask. When is it again?
Saturday, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time.
Cool. Nick, give me the link, or Linda, you can find me on Facebook and send me the link.
That is, and if that's 8, you said 8:30, Linda?
Yeah.
Okay, so that means for me that will be about 7:30 my time. So Chris, that will make it 6:30 your time.
Okay. Yep. Anyway, we might be planning a trip out to Indiana somewhere. So the point is I'll be close to both you two, and maybe we could do something.
It would be awesome if we could. It definitely could.
I've never met Nick in person.
Sorry, Lynn. I know, of course, since you're in the UK.
You can fly over, Lynn.
I'm going across the pond for haunted locations. So if you have any haunted locations you would like to see done.
See, there you go.
There you go. Yes.
That's what I also love. See, and I've watched Linda's show quite on numerous occasions. And what I also love about her show, and in fact, what I think we have one thing in common with both of our shows is that we focus on like a lot of the lesser known locations instead of, I mean, yeah, every now and then we'll focus on some of the bigger, like some of the popular locations like Fox Hollow Farm, for example. But there are so many other locations out there that, there's a lot of them that I'm sure a good vast majority of us don't even know about. And I think it's important for us to cover them, whether it's through her show or my show.
Yeah.
Did you do my location, Nick?
The Abbey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I did that the week before we went to the Abbey, 2 years ago. That's the other thing too I do now is I also have been taking requests where I take requests in, but also if any of us happen to have an investigation coming up, I'm also more than willing to put a slideshow together and present it on the show, especially for those that want to know about it. I mean, I know not everyone wants to know, but for those that do, I put it together to kind of almost act like a precursor to the investigation. Whether I'm part of it myself or not, I still am willing to do it. And of course, I would do it the week prior to the investigation.
Yeah. No, I'm just glad with what's happening with it that you actually.
What were you going to say, Linda?
Said I take requests too. Because I'm just saying, with you, not everybody knows. Like, not everybody, like Nick says, wants to know the history of a location. They want to go on blind. But me, I'd rather know the history so I know what I'm getting myself into. So if I need to bring my protection with me, or if I'm okay. So, like the old Kosciuszko County Jail here in Marshall, Indiana, where I reside, I know I can go into that location and not have to worry about bring in protection with me. That's kind of like my home away from home. I investigate that location quite a bit. And
Yeah. Oh,
Oh, I think she's freezing up.
It froze out, yeah.
Rose, Linda.
Linda, you there? Can you hear us? Oh, there
Yeah,
we go.
yeah.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
You were freezing up.
Dang, Indiana.
Oh, and we just lost her.
Oh,
We were about to end anyway, right?
Yeah, I was going to wrap things up. You know, I'll give Elise another. I'll give her at least another minute or two before we
Yeah.
end this. That way she can come back on.
I'll have to. I can find your Nick files on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's been broadcasted.
I want to go back and watch the Abbey one because I've never seen it. So
yeah,
the Abbey's a location I've been to in Canyon City.
All right, Tom. What the hell do you need?
I need the more enthusiastic Pickle
okay.
Tom.
Yep, she's back. She's back. Here we go.
Pickle Tom.
Oh yeah, Pickle Tom.
What happened?
That's right.
Like, everything just crashed.
Yeah, I kind of figured that. We kind of figured that you crashed or something.
See, look, he says he needs a proper Pickle Tom from you.
All right, hang on a second, Tom. Pickle Tom. You feel better now, Tom? Please say yes. All right.
Well, feel better, Tom.
Were you before we end, Linda? Were you? I know you got cut off. Were you trying to say something before you got frozen, or I already forgot exactly what you were saying?
I was talking about the old Kosciuszko County Jail here in Warsaw, where I reside. I investigate that quite a bit, and that's like home away from home, and so that's one of the locations that I know that I don't have to worry about going into with my protection. And my daughter, Maya, she goes with me to that location and investigates too. So
how old is she?
She just turned 11 today.
Awesome.
Oh, speaking of which, I think that's her. I was going to say, I think that's her coming up right now.
Yeah. Love it.
Lovely.
That's Nick.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi. She is actually showing signs of being a pretty strong medium.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep.
That's cool. No, I just love when you let young kids in on the investigation instead of saying you have to be 18 or you have to be 20. I get locations, well, they do it for insurance, but...
Yeah, well, over here, you know, we have young teams of young people who are actually learning by going to locations, and it's all done in a very, very safe manner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then you guys know, too, back when I was in high school, that I started a paranormal club, which is still running to this day, almost 20 years later. Oh, God, Tom.
Yeah.
You know, I started that paranormal club almost 20 years later. I mean, almost 20 years later, it's still running. So there's always a new generation of kids that want to. You know, it is true that while most times when it comes to a lot of these investigations or locations, either you got to be either 18 or 21 or over, or in some cases, some do allow younger, like as young as 16 or 17. I've always said for the most part that it should not be restricted. Kids could learn this kind of stuff without, you know, freaking out or whatever. I mean, when I first started, I was only 12. So when I was around, in other words, I was around your daughter's age, Linda, when I first started.
That's cool.
Actually, she started pretty young. She started around 8.
Awesome.
And she's actually the only child that has ever been and is only allowed to be going into the old Kosciuszko County Jail to investigate, because she has shown that she is respectful to the location itself, to the artifacts, and to the spirit.
Uh-oh.
Oh, she froze again.
He is really respectful when it comes to it.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, a lot of children are interested because they're seeing things all the time anyway, aren't they? Young kids see it all the time. About
9, 10 is usually when they usually cut off about that age of seeing spirits and stuff. Her, on the other hand, when she was seeing a little boy named Adam, which is from the Casco County Jail, and he's got a connection to a cemetery here in Indiana, Elkhart. And she could still see him and communicate with him. She thought it was an imaginary friend, and then she realized no,
Yeah,
that's not imaginary, because he had a different glow. He had a glow around him.
Yeah.
Where mommy didn't have a glow. So she is showing pretty good signs, and she's been interested in it. And I don't hide my life from my kids. They have questions, I answer it, and I honestly believe what Nick said. If they're interested in it, they should be able to allow to know about it and get knowledge about it. She knows how to use all of my paranormal equipment. She knows pretty much the majority of all the paranormal equipment that I own. And what's your favorite one?
Spirit box.
The spirit box. She loves using my SB7 box.
But also, when you look at these young people coming up now, they've got a fresh insight. Where sometimes where we could carry on doing what we're doing, it gets a bit staid. They have a new insight and a fresh one, and it gives you a chance to think about. And do you know what? It brightens everything up.
It does.
I asked my nephew. He does not like stuff at all paranormal, but I'll ask him. I'm like, dude, I've been using. I'll just say the spirit box. I've been using the spirit box now 5 times. What should I do? And he'll be like,
yeah,
use that freaking orange thing you got there or whatever, And so, and it's
like experience. It's just obvious that. Like
I'm glad she's enjoying it. I'm glad she really enjoys it.
That's great. I was going to say it's quite obvious to see, and it's great to see that we already have the next generation of paranormal investigators, which that is something that we've been doing for decades, if not over a century or so.
Yeah.
And to see kids, taking our place, continuing on this legacy, it goes to show that the paranormal investigation field, that's not going anywhere anytime soon.
No. Hopefully it'll grow and get more accepted.
Yes, absolutely.
Hello.
But anyways, guys, I think we're gonna end things because in less than 2 hours, I got to do supernatural talk. And, I'm just gonna respond just very quickly because this was broadcasting on my personal page. Irene has been watching, so good to see you, Irene. She also said, I don't tell anyone but I do residentials in America. And check this out. She just wrote this. Speaking of such natural disasters, we just saw on the news that there was a huge tornado in Shizuoka, if I'm saying that correctly, prefecture. It was massive and devastating. It's the prefecture near the Pacific coast where the weather is warm and hot during the winter. And wow, that's quite phenomenal to hear that they had a tornado hit Japan. Although honestly, at the same time, I'm not surprised because from what I've heard, and Irene already knows this, but compared to like the amount of tornadoes we get here, Japan does get its own share of tornadoes, though not as frequently as we have them over here. But they've had quite the amount of them over the years. So, but Irene, hopefully, I hope you play safe, be safe out there, and let us know what the status is. But anyways, again, we're going to end things now. Again, thank you guys so much for coming on, taking your time. And this was just probably as I would say, the best way possible to really, commemorate such a tragic event that happened 125 years ago. So I can't thank you guys enough for this. Seriously, thank you.
Great job, Nick. It was an amazing presentation.
Nice to meet you all as well. Nice to meet you too. Yeah, you have to make friends.
Yeah. But anyways, we're gonna end things now. Even though I'm gonna be coming back on in less than 2 hours with supernatural talk. But I don't know exactly when I'll be.
Is that 2 hours Nick Standard Time or real time?
I don't know exactly when I'll bring again because, like I said, Nick Files. It was just going to be a brief comeback, so I don't know exactly when the show will be officially coming back. But like I said, as soon as I get these audiobooks and projects out of the way, I can finally get back to work. So hopefully sometime soon. I would love to start doing it again before the end of 2025. As I would just simply say, only time will tell at this point. So fingers
Yeah.
crossed. And I know there's a lot of people who've been eager for me bringing back the show. And again, like you, Linda, there's a lot of locations and historic locations out there, both haunted and historic, that need to be brought about. I do have a list already of the locations that I do need to put slideshows together, and hopefully soon, like I said, after these audio books, I can finally get through the list, and Nick Files will be officially back by then.
You guys can do a collaboration.
We've talked about that a few times. Yeah. But again, because of my audio projects, I haven't been able to pursue a crossover. So those kind of ideas, like I said, you'll have to wait until I'm done with these projects.
Absolutely
Well,
not.
whenever.
Yeah, I'll keep you updated. I'll keep you updated, Linda, obviously. So it's just a matter of time.
Send me that link, Nick, for that program.
Oh yeah, the clip of her bell. Yeah, I'll send it to you guys right after I get off. Right after we get off.
Awesome, thank you, Nick.
Yeah, you're very welcome. But anyways, for everyone who has been watching, thank you guys so much for hanging out and listening to this tragic story. And hopefully we'll see you guys again real soon. So you guys all have